American presidents were people like you and like me, or at least that's how the founders intended them to be. Hi, my name's Teddy Ebby. Welcome back to my reoccurring segment where we're talking about the nicknames of the US presidents from the past. Last time we finished up the three most popular negative nicknames of President number 15, James Buchanan, and everybody's all excited to move on to President number 16, the one you've been waiting for, Abraham Lincoln. And today we're going to talk about his three most popular positive nicknames, plus a bonus nickname. Finding these nicknames wasn't too difficult, considering that Abraham Lincoln is consistently ranked among the top 5 favorite US presidents in history. His positive nicknames are almost a historiography of the American self-made image. His humble beginnings to his constitutional innovation and finally his status as a martyr. There is some historical complexity behind the praise. This is why I'll be adding one extra positive nickname that's a little less well known. Without further ado, we can begin with positive nickname number one of the most recognizable presidential nicknames of all time, where he was known as Honest Abe. It's hard to overestimate just how powerful this nickname was. It was codified in newspapers and stump speeches, but developed through a series of stories built from his support base, from his citizen supporters. His frontier origins, being born and growing up in a log cabin, were supplemented by a series of widely told stories about how he would do such honest things as returning extra change to a shopkeeper.
Keep the change, you filthy animal.
Most importantly, refusing to promise political positions to friends and allies before he entered office, something that was all too common in the 1840s, 50s, and 60s. You see, as politics ramped up towards the Civil War and people were more focused on the sectarian violence going on, more and more bribery and political scandals were coming to light as people were becoming careless, and the public was becoming increasingly frustrated with administrations that were more focused, possibly duly so, on preventing people from killing one another and not holding corrupt government officials to task. Lincoln's determination to avoid these scandals gave his image an air of uncorruptibility. In essence, the nickname suggested that the man was so honest that even if you disagreed with some of his decisions, you could trust his reasons behind it.
My name is Honest Abe Goodman, not Honest Abe Lincoln.
And this would be incredibly important later on in his term when he suspended habeas corpus and tried to push emancipation through an unwilling Congress.
This amendment is that cure!
This nickname and everything behind it was incredibly crucial as the Union's legitimacy hung in the balance, and Lincoln had to become a kind of moral arbiter. Second most popular positive nickname would be just as titanic in the historical minds of the American people, where he was referred to as the Great Emancipator. No getting away from being called that. While he wasn't the only one, by far, to push for the emancipation of African Americans, he did put forth an immense amount of effort from the executive office. Emancipation Proclamation of 1863, shortly after the Battle of Gettysburg, was incredibly important. It set the stage for the passage of the 13th Amendment and the abolishment of slavery evermore. Yes, the emancipation did turn the words of the Confederate leadership back against them, reframing their argument that it was a states' rights issue and instead an issue of common humanity. But it also opened up the door for the enlistment of African American soldiers. After that 1863 proclamation, units like the 54th Massachusetts Infantry Regiment swelled the Union ranks. Almost 180,000 African American soldiers joined the ranks of the Union, at one time composing almost 10% of the Union's entire military strength. This positive nickname highlights a strategic use of presidential wartime powers, and not only that, shows Lincoln's true colors as a man interested in the emancipation of slaves.
We hold this truth to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights.
And the last of our three most popular positive nicknames is definitely Old Abe. Lincoln, by all accounts, was not an old president. He was 56 at the time of his death. But there was a sharp comparison between him as the executive and a majority of the soldiers under his command being green Union boys under the age of 30 for sure. In fact, boys as young as 12 would serve as cavalry buglers and drummers and errand boys running to get ammunition on fraught battlefields where brother fought against brother. And that's actually where the origin of the nickname comes from. It was utilized by soldiers as this kind of shorthand. The nickname was so endearing to soldiers in the Union that the 8th Wisconsin Infantry Regiment even had a bald eagle as their mascot, nicknamed Old Abe. The nickname was short, warm, and folksy, and blended that kind of public-private relationship with the commander-in-chief. Not only that, but the nickname is supported with how much the Civil War aged Abe.
By outward appearance, you're 10 years older than you were a year ago.
There are plenty of famous pictures of men entering the White House and then leaving it, looking as if they've aged double, triple, and even quadruple the number of years that they spent in office. But Abe served as commander-in-chief during wartime, quite possibly one of the worst and bloodiest wars America has ever had. It's not that difficult to look at the transformation and see how many people looked at Abe as a middle-aged man who quickly became old. The reason why it's still a positive nickname is it can be seen just how much of himself the man put into his job. The man sunk his final years and his youth into the office, and that was worth some respect. But above all, it helped sustain loyalty and morale in the population and soldiers in what really was a more protracted war than many Union generals thought it was going to be. In particular, Abe himself. Little bonus information here for you. Lincoln initially only requested 75,000 volunteers for a period of 90 days. They thought the Civil War would be over that quick. Little did they know it would stretch years. But perhaps that was because of this extra nickname where he was known as the Rail Splitter. Let me draw the connection for you. Republican leadership was looking for a populist candidate that they could use to win the 1860 election, and they found it in Abe. This nickname was pushed by the Republican leadership in order to tie Lincoln with common man labor. See, Lincoln's early life in the frontier of Indiana and Illinois included a great deal of physical labor. A lot of this labor would include splitting wood into split rail fences and separating property lines out there in the frontier. Republican political strategists knew that they needed to seize on this opportunity to present Lincoln as this kind of rough-hewn frontiersman in comparison to the Eastern aristocracy. The label features some deliberate political packaging, and not every rail-splitting story about Abraham Lincoln is true, but the nickname stuck for good reason. That reason being that it underscored the belief that leadership could and should come from hard work and moral grit. But even a man with that kind of moral grit would slip and make mistakes, and mistakes that would generate enemies, and enemies that would generate negative nicknames for him. Once again, my name is Teddy Ebby. These have been the 3 most popular positive nicknames for President number 16, Abraham Lincoln. Join me next time when we talk about his 3 most popular negative nicknames.